Welcome to the Motivated Martial Arts Podcast. Your hosts, Jackson White and Gavin Cook, have been friends and Taekwondo training partners for over 40 years. This podcast will bring you a mixture of their life stories, martial arts, and business experiences to motivate you in life and throughout your martial arts journey. Adding in a mixture of inspiring interviews and some of the best traditional martial artists around today. So over to your hosts, the Motivated Martial Artists.
Welcome to the Motivated Martial Artists Podcast with me, Gavin Cook.
And me, Jackson White.
And this morning we've got Rodney Lockyer calling us all the way from Perth, Australia. We're really looking forward to getting Rodney on. I remember seeing him back in 1991 when he had long golden locks of hair doing backflips and tricks at Granby Halls. So, we're desperate to get Rodney on. Obviously, we had his business partner, Tony, on a year or so ago. So thanks for coming on this morning, Rodney.
No worries. And hello, guys. Thanks for the invite. I'd love to reminisce and talk about this stuff.
Likewise.
Yeah. And the best thing is Perth, apparently it's raining this morning and the sun's out in the
Yes.
UK. So need to get that dig in.
There's a rarity.
Yeah, first time ever you got better weather than us.
Okay then, Rodney. Good to have you on this morning. I'm going to kick off with the first question. So just give us a little bit of our listeners, I suppose, an insight into your backstory, where you grew up, the sort of schooling you had, your environment, and I suppose ultimately how you got into martial arts.
Yeah, for sure. I actually grew up in a town north of here called Exmouth, beautiful fishing town, reef. It's awesome life. And there's a US naval base up there. So the town actually ran dual currency, US dollars, Aussie dollars. And we had really multicultural, Filipino American, Malaysian American. It was just a real mix of cultures. And, that was 70s, 80s. I grew up there and I started training basically in 82. So I was just turning 12 at the time, been going ever since. And yeah, basically I trained on the US base with the second in command on the base. He ran a Taekwondo club, very just traditional old style, and then started competing in a few of the local towns. And I eventually met Tony when he came up, because he's a mad fisherman, and I met him up there and ended up moving down to Perth to do it full time with him. But yeah, I think as all people back then, I got into martial arts because of Bruce Lee. And there was no club in town. So I probably started training a year before, because me and my mates would be in the backyard trying to be Bruce Lee for a good year there before someone who actually did martial arts showed up. And that was in 82 when I started, because it was just a town, out on the Cape, nothing there really apart from beautiful ocean reef, a lifestyle of fishing. The food was amazing. You were catching most of your own fish, just a really good wild kind of lifestyle growing up.
Okay, so just describe to us this class then, because obviously in a quite an isolated town then. What sort of class was it? Was it you mentioned very traditional? How was the instructor, and who was he?
Right, he was. His name was Donald Richardson. He was actually, I'm pretty sure, he was the second in command, the highest commanding officer on the naval base. So I'm not sure of the ranks, but I know he was second in command. But he actually fought in the Korean War, and that's where he started his Taekwondo himself. And he affiliated with an old grandmaster who's passed since. I think him himself's in his late 80s, 90s now, but he basically started training there. And then the US Navy, they have tours of about 4 years around all the US bases. And he arrived in town, started a club. It was very traditional, as in a very old style of Taekwondo called Kwon. And it was more, it wasn't, it was more the ITF kind of style, but it was an older style. So it was where ITF came from. It wasn't the WTF, which was the base I'm kind of in now. And basically, or WT as it's called now, they changed it for obvious reasons. The advent of the internet and texting changed that, didn't it? But very just patterns and old style military training. And then the competition stuff started when he got some pads in and we started competing with people in neighbouring towns with karate and other styles. But, it was a good base, very, motivational, philosophical. He's a very good instructor in the fact that he instilled the character of that moral fibre and character of, being a strong person and getting forward in life. And it's probably where the base of my dedication came from, to stick at it like you guys for so long,
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all starts, doesn't it, from those old school original instructors, as we all had. It was, the style of teaching was so much, different back in those days to what it is now.
Definitely.
It was literally, look, this is what my instructor taught me. This is what I'm going to teach you. If you don't like it, get out. That's just how it is. Isn't it?
Yeah.
There's no softening around the edges. It was just,
No.
This is the traditional martial art. We're here to fight each other. If you're not tough enough, then go and play frisbee.
That is exactly my take on it when I explain it to people. Exactly that. I said, you just got bashed around, and if you stayed, you stayed. If you left, you left. That's how it was.
That's true, yeah. But it's interesting, as I say, brutal, as tough as it was, people still stuck with it. Yeah.
I mean, I think humans, it's funny because your perspective naturally is that life's good if you're comfortable and you're not facing, but it's actually the opposite. If you're challenged and pushed to improve and overcome, that's where the passion comes from, and it's, we do need resistance to build resilience and be successful. And without it, you kind of get bored and life becomes depressing. So that's my understanding as I've got older. It's the challenges I used to hate that actually, or I thought were hard, that actually have bred the kind of mentality I've got that makes me have a happy life, really. So, I think it's that thing.
I agree with you 100%. And the funny thing is now is that, as parents, you always look to your kids and think, I want them to have a better life than what I had, or I want them to do different things to what I did or whatever. So you try to keep your kids comfortable. But actually, by doing that, they're not going through the same sort of challenges that you went through.
Yeah.
And, it's weird. I think that they've maybe all got too comfortable themselves, maybe. I don't know.
Well, maybe you're just too soft, Gavin.
Oh, yeah. Well, it could be that.
Well, I think people look at it the wrong way. Let's talk about failure. Failure is there to teach you how to overcome things you can't achieve. And the reality is failure is not a failure. Failure is only a failure if you decide to give up. And I think, martial arts is just that. You lose. What's happening is you're actually learning to overcome losing. Mm-hmm. And that propels you to the next thing. And let's face it, that's the skills you need to overcome the obstacles in life. But if you don't do that, if you don't develop that skill, and sometimes it takes decades, you're just not you're not gonna grow up and have a successful life, because a lot of life is just not going to go the right way. It's the way you deal with it that matters. And I guess you guys agree that martial arts is almost a physical representation of that mechanism. It's in your face. When you fail.
It's a great template because it gives you a number of successional steps. So from grade per grade in that area, where you choose to go. Then is your competition side. So there's numerous avenues and paths to help you progress. And I always say to my students, people are going to find a particular area of something challenging. That's what brings you out as a martial artist. That's what grows. Whether you get your first 3 or 4 grades and it's dead easy, and all of a sudden you hit a grade and it's hard. And that's where you see those break points. And that's how you make those characters of people. Some of them will quit at that point. And normally in Taekwondo, we see it around about green belt. Once you've learned one, a little bit of that, and then the next concession of moves and combinations is challenging. And some people can't get to grips with that and they quit. Others persevere and they move on and they find it easy. Others that breeze all the way through, once they get to their red belt, they might find that challenge area there. And it's about mentoring them to overcome that challenge. Or, other people, they can't spar for their life. So you've got to mentor them into that. They're scared of getting hurt. They can't coordinate. Their timing's bad. And all those factors just compound them, and it just brings out fear. And once they have that fear, it's about unpicking those individual areas and then helping them progress past it. And that's what you do failures, isn't it, in life? So I think it's a great platform to do that.
Oh, definitely. And that's the real lesson we're teaching here, because you can't achieve anything in anything unless you can do that,
Right. So we're getting slightly off track because we want to talk more about you, but it's good to know that we're on the same path in terms of our thoughts on failure.
Yeah, for sure.
What interested you in this martial art of Taekwondo then? So you got into your dojan, you were teaching, or sorry, you were being taught. Was it the kicks? Was it the strict regime? And where did you feel you started excelling?
Well, I think I had the first thing was I saw a Bruce Lee movie. I was at the drive-ins, open air drive-ins back when they were a thing. And I saw this movie. I could not believe that people could fight like that with their legs. It was for me, the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And so that was it. I was kicking at home. I was kicking with my mates. Then once the classes started, I had a lot of friends join with me. And there was something, and I kid you not, I was in about the first 2 weeks of training. I was just loving it. And I said, you know what? I'm doing this for the rest of my life. And I don't know why I thought that to myself, but I did. But I noticed about a year later, all my friends I joined with were no longer doing that. And I used to play fight with them a lot. And when we were mucking around, I just noticed I could take care of most of them. And I was always the small one that got pushed around, not bullied, but just in our play fighting, I'd never win. Yeah. And I thought to myself, see, it was a realization that, if I just stick at something, I'm going to get good. And I think after that first year is when I really knuckled down and got into how do I get better? What do I do? And I had a few Filipino friends, and I don't know if you know about Filipinos, but they tend to physically mature younger, and so they can be a 13-year-old bodybuilding looking dude. And I had a mate called Joe who looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger at the age of 14. This kid was so strong, and
I bet he had a bit of a beard as well.
They're like
and strong. Yeah, that was like Gavin, strangely enough. When he was 14, he was like an 18, 19-year-old bloke.
No, I just used to have nostril hair, mate. That was all I could grow.
It is amazing. And he was such a strong kid, and he was so fired up that we would go and train for 2 hours and then spar for another 2 hours after. And I was his dummy. He basically kicked me around for a good year, but I got really good because of that. And that's where I was just fully dedicated from there. And I eventually left town because there was no competitions. And I got into training with Tony, who was doing, the competition side at that side. And that's where our whole path with ATI started,
Yeah. The thing is, it's when you're a fighter and when you're a competitor and spar, that's all you want to do, isn't it? You just go around hunting for the next competition. And if you're in a club that doesn't do many, you want to be doing a competition every weekend, don't you? When you're that hungry for it, it's just you train in the week, competition at the weekend, keep training, keep fighting. And they're certainly good days. Did you find that when you and Tony got together, then were there many other clubs around you?
Yeah, well, there was all the I hadn't come from a competitive style, so when I first come down, I was just getting beaten up left, right, and centre, really. But because I was so into it, I was doing it. But yeah, there was a lot of competitions. There's a local club, like Perth area club every couple of months, and then obviously state, national. We were flying into state. I went to New Zealand nationals once. I was just going to any comp I could fight in, so at the beginning there I was doing a lot, and that a lot of that was WTF, but we started mixing in a bit of kickboxing, and then we started the whole stuff with TAGB and coming over there, so that was a few years after that. So we had a WTF base with the legs and just started incorporating the hands. But yeah, we were always competing. There was a lot going on. Not as, we didn't have the chance to do as much international. It's just so far to travel and so expensive, but, always competing.
So talk us through your first competition then. You remember that far back?
Oh, right. Fun. Yeah. I my first ever, well, actually I did fight a couple when I was up north. So I was probably about 12. I think I went in a karate competition. So it was the stop point karate style, like point point sparring.
Yeah.
And basically, I got a blood nose and got beaten. I didn't know what I was doing, what was going on. I think I was about 14 at that stage. And then I actually flew over to the US to grade for my first Dan and did a competition over there and did quite well. I ended up winning the division, but it was only like a touch contact, not even as heavy as the point stop for you guys. It was that style, but that's kind of where I thought, yeah, I kind of really enjoy this, even though I was no good at it. That's where it started. So I would have competed first when I was about 12, 13, and then again when I was 14, when I went to the US. And that's, you know, a couple of years after that, Tony come up, and that's when I came down to Perth and started competing regularly. You know, it wasn't till I was 18, 19, I really started fighting.
Okay.
And what was that? What was that sort of that awakening moment that really, you know, it's like you start off, you do a few competitions, you get beaten up, and then you go back in again. And all of a sudden, it might be that you win one, or you catch someone with a great kick, and the crowd goes wild, and you're like, wow, I love this. I'm hooked. This is what I want to do. Can you remember that? Can you remember that moment?
Yeah, the way even losing. Catching glimpses of stuff actually working and feeling really good about it, you know, and I'd lose, but I'd be like, oh, that really worked. I guess from the start, I had that mindset that I just had to work out how to be better. And, you know, a lot of competitors are great. You talk to them after, you talk to them about training. What are they doing? You talk to the good guys and everyone shares. I guess it got me hooked because you made good friends, and a lot of it was just, how do I beat this guy? You know, I had a guy over here, his name's Carlo Massimino. This guy was winning international competitions, you know, hard competitions like the Dutch Open, where you're having, you know, 7 or 8 fights in the WT style, the full contact style. And it's very hard on the feet and the body. This guy was just unbeatable at one stage, and he was in my division. And I didn't measure myself by winning, but how many points I lost by, you know, I was like, it killed me first time. I didn't score a point. Second time, I got a few, you know, and that's kind of that attitude is what kept me going. It's just, how do I get better? And, you know, I lost a lot, got to a stage where I was in the top 3 consistently in whatever I was doing. And that was after losing a lot, basically. So I thought it was part of the process, really. I got really good at losing. I got to a point where emotionally it didn't affect me at all. It's more like, all right, I need to work on this, And I almost got to a stage where I went in not worrying about winning or losing, just trying to be better, you know. And that was good because that drove me for a long time to keep fighting.
But that also takes a lot of pressure off you, doesn't it?
Yeah. And there's not as much emotion, and your life doesn't fall apart just because you lost, you know. It's not. I lost that attachment eventually. I just was like, I'm doing this because I love it, you know. And when I was loving it, I got better, you know. And I think you win some, you lose some.
It's definitely a good mindset to get into, isn't it? Because if you can get into that mindset of actually enjoying losing, because every time you lose, you know it's taking you a little bit step forward.
Yeah.
It's like sales, isn't it? You know, I mean, we're all in sales to a degree, because, you know, you've got your club to sell and your studio to sell, and Jackson's in sales. I used to be in sales, but, you know, I used to teach the salespeople, you know, every time you get a no, that's taking you one step forward to a yes, right?
Yeah.
And every time you fail at a competition or a grading, it's taking you that little bit step forward. And if you can get in that mindset of, okay, I've failed, so what? Let's move on. And next time I'm going to be better, or next time I'm going to win, or next time I'm going to score 5 points on that guy. You know, I got 3 points on him. Round one, he beat me up. The next time I fought him, I got 3 points on him. Now I'm going to get 5 points on him, and then eventually I'm going to win. You know, it's just that progression, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's exactly how it works. And, you know, it's hard to get that. For some competitors, they're so emotional and it's so hard for them. They take it personally, but I always saw it as a journey. It's just getting better. It doesn't matter if I lose. How do I get better? And, you know, sometimes you win, but you fought like rubbish. You know, I may have won, but I wasn't happy with my performance. You know, I missed things, got caught with things I never should have got caught with. So it was always just about improving, no matter the result. And some of my
something I always thought of, you know, particularly in martial arts, where you tip up to a competition, you don't know who's there, first of all, and you could pick the best fighter in the first round, and that's your day over.
That's right.
Away. And so I always used to not take the winning and losing or even placing. I would take the performance. And when I became quite proficient at fighting, I then used to think, well, actually, I've got an inexperienced competitor. What I need to do against this competitor, I don't need to go out and wipe him out with all my best moves and blow all my energy. What I want to do, I want to use him to practice my weak stuff and still win the fight. And
that's
then
right.
To constantly use that as a development process for myself. So as I say to my students, it's not about that winning or losing. It's about the consistency and setting yourself those performance goals. Because actually, if you go on the first round, you might, particularly kids as well, they might get that big kid in the division. They're the smallest, just moved into a division. Okay, so you've got to change what your expectations are. The chances of you winning that, difficult. So let's work on something. And if you can execute that, actually, that will give you a better chance of winning the bout. But actually, you should look to the execution of that planned piece of work that you've taken into that bout, regardless who you're fighting against, and not actually the winning or the losing.
Yeah, and that's this is the biggest thing with kids. So the hardest thing is when you get those kids that are natural and they do their first bunch of competitions as a beginner and they do win a lot. It's coming to a head when they lose for the first time. Yeah. And how many of those kids want to just chuck it in and their parents, he doesn't want to do it anymore. You're like, hang on. Losing is the biggest lesson they have to learn if they want to be good at this. They had to lose at some point. And I'm quite happy for kids to lose from the start because it's actually easier for them to overcome it than the talented one who's won a bunch and then loses for the first time. They just haven't developed the emotional
intelligence
reaction. They're not used to it.
And and I think again that's another skill that you'll pick up from a martial arts school.
Yes,
you won't get that in a lot of sports, and particularly team sports. It's because you can hide amongst the team.
That's right. Yeah.
But when you're doing martial arts, to a degree, it is an individual sport, although there is a team element to it. But in that individual combative bout, it's about learning that emotional intelligence. When you are winning and losing, and how to increase your performance.
Yeah,
that's right.
I think a lot of parents are now savvy to that as well, aren't they? And that's why a lot of parents are bringing their kids into martial arts at an early age because then they know that they're not necessarily getting those lessons taught in regular school.
That's right.
Where everyone's a winner. I don't know. I don't want to talk over there, but you get a medal for competing. You get a medal. There's no first, second, or third places in this race. You're all winners. And I get why they do that, but ultimately it's not giving those kids the real life lessons that they need to learn at the early age because they're not learning how to deal with
definitely not. Yeah, I mean, resilient skills. I mean, you can hope and pray everything goes right for your child for his whole life, but what are the chances of that? So the next thing is, how do you deal with it? Because that's where the real power is. I mean, that's where the power is. And we know that. And a lot of people know that, but people forget that. It's hard learning to lose or not get your way, but being able to handle that is going to make your life so much better, obviously.
No, definitely. So Rodney, so go back to, you mentioned when you were 14, you went over to America to do your black belt. What was that like? Who did you get your black belt under?
So in that organization, to do Dan gradings, you had to grade under the actual master. He was a 9th Dan way back then, and so you had to grade under him. So I flew all the way to America, and can you imagine a guy who's never really been out of his own state? All of a sudden, on a plane, I'm going to a country. It was amazing. I traveled around the country for 2 months and went and did my grading and fought in a little competition. It was just, if I was going to stick at this, that kind of sealed it. I had such a good time at that competition, and life experience. I got to see the world, and that's the first time in my life I went, oh my God, there's a whole big world out there, and I had no idea of it, and so that was way back in 84. I went over for that.
So how old were you? You were 14?
14. Yeah.
I mean, that's a big, I think I did my black belt when I was 15. It was a big experience for me just going from Daventry to Bristol. than mine going from Perth to the USA.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever been to Daventry. It's a small town.
I can imagine. I grew up in one.
But I mean that must have been a great experience, and I guess
it was
a great life lesson for you as well. So
yeah, it was. Look, I'd mixed with a lot of people through the US space because it was very multicultural. You had people that were from the Philippines, Malaysia, but they were all part of the US military because they had bases over there. And I had a rich upbringing. A lot of my friends were just all different mixes, and it was just such a culture mix. It was really cool. And then to go to another country and see the cities. All I remember is doing breakdancing on the street with a bunch of kids in Seattle, and they actually thought in Australia there were no cities and there were kangaroos everywhere. it was. I always remember, and all of a sudden I'm in breakdance battles with people I don't know. I did a bit of breakdance, so I was rubbish. I lost every one of them, but it was so good to meet kids that grew up completely differently to me. Yeah. It was a real experience. So that was that first trip. I loved it.
And I assume then you were successful with your first downgrading.
Yeah, I passed that. I was looking back. I was naturally a little technician. I really focused. I guess it's that artistic side. I'm into music, but I really focused. I had pictures in my head of how good kicks should look, and that was my focus. I always had good techniques, so I didn't struggle with gradings and things like that because I was quite focused on that. The fighting side, which I enjoyed much more, came secondary because I was in such a traditional style. There's such a focus on the technique of the moves and perfect kicks, and always trying to perfect that thing. And then the fighting side started, and that's where I had to learn to actually move and get out of the way because I just had none of those skills, doing a traditional martial art.
Yeah, like I say, I remember seeing you when you guys came over for the 91 World Championships in Granby Halls. And I remember sitting there watching the Australian demo team, you guys, and you was doing, I'm sure it was you, Rodney, but was it? There was somebody who had their hands clenched, and you stood in them, did like a backflip, through a couple of boards. Yeah. Back, I'm sure it was your big long hair. I remember it, but I've still got the video somewhere at home.
Yeah,
but, just in all of you guys. I think I was 15 at the time when I was in that competition.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, Tony was the guy throwing me, and to be honest, I was blind in that. He knew how high to push, and I just felt where to kick, and I couldn't do it without him because we practiced together. So he was as much of that break as I was.
Yeah, so you there with the legs extended, knowing where they're going, and he's the one applying the power to get you the right distance.
Yeah, and I've tried it with other people, and they pushed too much, and they threw me over the board. And he just knew exactly what we need. We just had it synced, and so I used to do that with him. And we just said one day, I wonder if I could kick a board. And we were trying to do a backflip and hit it when the board's on the ground, as you land.
Yeah.
And we thought, what if we do it above? Now, there's people that do that, but we hadn't really seen it. We kind of just were a bit crazy with all the demo stuff and just thought, give it a go. And I almost got it first time we did it. And really, it was about Tony making sure I was going straight over. And after that, it was locked in. I could just do it every time. It was just, yeah.
So when you were doing it, how much did you keep recalling that Bruce Lee moment in Enter the Dragon when he did the same kick?
Yeah.
Was this it? Was this you had to do it to bring yourself back to those early days?
Man, it's funny you bring that up because that kick, where he catches his leg and he does a backflip, kicks him on the way over, is literally the reason I started training. That kick right there. I went to that and went, oh man, I've got to do this. Because Enter the Dragon was the first movie I ever saw of his. But yeah, it was just blew me away.
Those fight scenes. I mean, I don't know about you, but as a kid, those fight scenes. I mean, I did on a Betamax video, and I used to watch those fight scenes over and over and over.
Yeah.
I never used to bother all the middle bit. I used to skip through it. I used to watch the beginning scene, and I used to skip the rest of it and just watch that massive fight scene at the end, over.
Yeah.
It's crazy when you look back, because I remember, Gavin and I, we used to go to competitions together, and we'd always liaise at one of each other's house first. And we'd always be out an hour early. We'd always make sure it was an hour early, or Gavin would stop over at mine, or I'd stop over at his. First thing in the morning before a competition, we would put those scenes on, from Bloodsport, from Rocky, any of those motivational last-minute scenes, and that would, and we'd start watching maybe Rocky first of all, and that would get us hyped. Then we'd go on to Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon, and maybe the Big Boss.
Yeah, oh man, I was just about to say to you, Rocky as well. Like, that's another thing that drove me, inspired the hell out of me. Yeah, it's we're all from that generation, so it's all the same.
It's ludicrous, isn't it?
I mean, Rocky was just great. I mean, I remember going to the cinema watching Rocky. I think it was Rocky 4. I think. I remember coming out, and I just remember seeing all these kids coming out, just punching each other. I mean, you can't help yourself, can you? Coming out of against the Russian.
I remember that.
Even worse, I started watching the new Creed. I went to the cinema to watch the new Creed. First thing I did was run home. Once I got home, started looking around. My partner says, "What are you looking for?" Get my skipping rope out. A few hours of skipping.
Oh, yeah, it's true. Even this morning, I'd go to a conditioning coach, and while I was waiting for him, this song comes on the TV. It's Hearts on Fire. Yeah, and I went, and it just took me straight back to Rocky and training and everything like that. Like, it's just that powerful of an anchor, when you've overstepped the mark, when you go out and buy loads of chickens. or start getting your students, next time your students come in, they say, okay, then, sir, what are we doing today? And you take them out in the back garden and get them chasing some chickens around the farm.
Yeah. Oh, God. So, when in terms of so obviously on the demo side, certainly the Granby horse piece was huge for us in the UK. Seeing that type of demo, such an inspirational demo, and I'm sure it's set a path for a generation of martial artists to try and follow. And we see a lot of tricksters. You're an early trickster, really. When did you start becoming successful in the fighting side of Taekwondo or martial arts, I suppose?
Yeah, look, because I only really started fighting about a year before that competition. Like, before then, I was just mainly traditional. I come down and train and ended up at that World Championships. But basically, I didn't get anywhere in the first. Actually, that Worlds where I did the backflip, I'm pretty sure that's the one where I was fighting my first bout, under 57. I was winning, but the guy did a hook kick to my eyebrow ridge, and it literally just blew straight up.
Yeah, I've had that before.
Yeah, they couldn't let me fight on. The whole thing was massive. And so I didn't even get through my first fight. And I can't remember whether it was that one or the next one, but probably the best I ever fought was after I actually stopped. I went back, it was in Cardiff, and I got to basically the quarterfinals. I just didn't struggle all day. And the next day in the team event, we only got through 3 bouts, but I never lost. And probably that was the best on that scene one, but probably 93, 94. So about 2-3 years in, I started doing good in the WTF. And then that opened up and a lot of the bodies merged, and it was a lot more intense competition. And really around 98, 99, so getting close to 2000, like when I was around 30, I started consistently being more in the top couple of, competitors. So yeah, it was a good, really 7-8 years of competing before I really started performing, and a lot of the people I was fighting had done competition from a kid. I'd started so much later. But then after I noticed a groove, I was just enjoying it, and win or lose, and I was fighting a lot better, So, yeah, it took a good 7 or 8 years before I started really performing, I'd say.
Okay. So, and then when did you and Tony set up your academies? Do you remember what year that was?
I moved down.
Not remember.
Yeah, well, I was like 19, basically. I moved down just at the start of 1990. And we kind of merged and became ATI in 93. but we're operating loosely like that then. So it was 93 that we formed into ATI and really merged. And I think from memory, 98 is when we opened our first full-time school. So we were just operating out of school halls and things. And like over here, it is a bit easier to get, leasing premises like full-time. And probably 98, we went in somewhere around there. We went into full-time school.
Yeah. I know. I remember when we interviewed Tony. I think a lot of the inspiration came from when they go to like trips in the US and things like that. And you look, it's like you go because we're quite similar in the UK. There's more and more full-time premises appearing these days. But again, a lot of instructors operate from school halls and village halls, and obviously, but you go to the US and they're on every mall corner, aren't they? Taekwondo, karate, kickboxing, or whatever. So. And they said they do.
We actually went to a convention in the US on running full-time schools, and one thing we noticed is there were some big schools making a lot of money who had rubbish quality, basically. Like their quality of martial arts just was nowhere near ours, but their business sense and how to run it was really good. That's generalizing. It wasn't all of them, but there were a lot that just weren't involved in, highly trained people for competition. They were just running a good character development based martial arts, and they were doing that. So that's where we got the fire and came back and said, let's give it a go.
Brilliant. And you've got three full-time academies now. You've got
that's right. And we've got a fourth one which is kind of an affiliate. Like it's not, we don't have franchise or anything, but it's kind of like that a little bit. But the three main ones, and as I said, myself and Tony are shareholders in all three. And then we have some other partners involved in those as well.
Brilliant. You own the premises? You're a real estate man as well?
One of them we do. Our headquarters that we started in, it's a suburb called Malaga, but we actually own that one. The others are just leased premises. And in property over here, it's up and down whether you buy it or should you lease it. Like, buying it was going to cost a lot more than leasing it over the long term, so we didn't end up doing it. We looked at it a couple of times, but
So with the COVID-19 situation then, Rodney, what sort of challenges have you faced in terms of keeping your organization stroke business moving forward?
Well, obviously when it first happened, I mean, seriously, you guys would have gone through this, but there's so much fear. The industry thought we're just going to collapse, because at that stage we're like, well, how long is it going to be? 6 months? What? And we're thinking, what we did literally in one day, we came in one day and went, and the staff going, every lead we've got booked has cancelled because it's, taken off. We hadn't been closed down yet. And then it's like, there's a whole bunch of people ringing up wanting to cancel their membership, And this was happening one day. And I go, Jesus. We went from that to the following week when we got locked down to having 30 online classes a week, which we split amongst all of us, having all set up and getting our members, just running classes. So each of us would run 2 or 3 a night, but they could log on to 4 or 5 or whatever they wanted to do. And I thought the stress was big, but the way we handled it and got it going, and every lockdown, we're straight online. We're providing online training. You don't have to miss classes, get back next week or whenever we are. And that went on for 3 months. And as I say, we probably lost or paused about 40%, but a lot of them came back after the 3 months, and there was a massive surge in, I went back and looked at the stats. There were just so many people after being locked down for 3 months that wanted to exercise and do stuff. And we suddenly surged back. We're still in a gym or two trying to come up. And as I say, we've hit a flat period. There is some post effect from this. All the government incentives finished in March over here. Okay. And basically, you can see in some areas it's affecting people. So I don't know. But then they say our economy's picking up. WA is kind of moving forward. So I think we're through it. But I was quite surprised at the customer goodwill we had. A lot of people hung in there and were really happy that we did the online, because in my head, I didn't know if it was going to work. What's this going to be like? But it really did work. It worked for us. So we were lucky. And again, we had another advantage you guys didn't. Our longest lockdown was 3 months, yeah, we basically only locked down for 3 months. Other than that, we've had 2 weeks and a week. So, you know, if it dragged on for a year, I think we would have obviously lost a lot more people.
Oh, yeah, I mean, Charles, it's been challenging in the UK, but I think from what you're saying there, you know, you do the online stuff. I think as an instructor, you're trying to give everything as you can, aren't you? You know, you're instructing, you're there, you're doing your Zoom classes, and you want to keep them going for your club. And I think sometimes you maybe underestimate just how important it is to them, as well as you. You know what I mean? You sort of, you're there as an instructor. It's like, you know, I want to keep my club going. I want to still be here in a year's time or 6 months' time. I'm going to give everything. I'm going to do 3, 4, 5 classes a day. You know, and you always get to that burnout stage. And sometimes you sort of maybe question. You think, well, you know, is the value proposition right? Maybe, you know, because a lot of my students are still paying their training fees, and they're not getting a real life instruction. They're only getting the virtual. But actually, when you come back and you speak to a lot of them, the amount of students that said to me, well, you know what, you guys doing those classes was an absolute lifesaver for us.
Yeah,
because it was the one thing that we had that we could still do, that we kept going. I had students sometimes training 6-7 times a week. You know, it was crazy. But
we got exactly the same, and it really surprised me because in my head, while the stress was going, I'm like, no one's going to be happy with this. But what we were getting was, oh, thank you guys for being the one activity week, because they were locked in their house.
One consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were just. It was a bit of a surprise to me, a pleasant surprise that people were that positive about it. And you know, there was no big issues for people that didn't want to do it. We were just stopping their memberships. We're letting them choose. But I was quite overwhelmed, actually. I really underestimated, like you say, how much people do value us sometimes, you know. So it was a pleasant surprise, that.
Well, yeah. At least, I mean, it's funny because when we were going through it, I certainly my thoughts when we reopened were like, I was like, right, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do my normal classes, and I'm going to make sure at least once or twice a week I'm going to keep up the virtual classes, because so many people really enjoyed them, and you've obviously got quite a big reach, haven't you, as well, virtually. You know, people can train all over the country. But the minute we're open, I'm like, no, sod it. That's it. I am off Zoom. I'm never going back to it. I can't take any more Zooms. You know, you just get to that point where you get so over it, for sure. When you actually can do the real stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, definitely. So as the motivated martial artist, we're keen to understand, Rodney, what's motivated you? And I suppose the easiest way to do this is probably split it down into 3 areas. So what motivated you when you first started martial arts? I think we probably covered that, but it's good to get that detail out of you. What's motivated you prior to lockdown, and what's motivating you now?
Right. So I guess, you know, obviously the Bruce Lee and the whole kid thing with just having I mean, as a kid, you don't realize, but it was the vision of what a strong man is and a cool dude. And that drove me for years. You know, that's, you know, trying to get everything right, looking good, being fit. It was all about that image that I saw of Bruce Lee on a film, which sounds weird, but that's literally what drove me for about 3 or 4 years. Did you ever get down
to that body fat percentage, do you think?
Yeah, well,
it was about 3%, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, I was down. I remember me and Tony going, this was mid-90s, so we're in our 20s, going for body fat measurements, and I think he was something ridiculous, like 2.5%. The guy said, I basically can't measure you properly, and I was, I think 3 or 4, but we were ridiculously training, and we were young, you know.
But bearing in mind, he did die during that film, so is that,
yes.
you have to question how far you're going to push yourself, right?
Yeah. Now he had I've got to say, and you know, he had an amazing physique. No one had a physique like that at that time. That was very uncommon, you know. And so, you know, there's some people that naturally have it, but that guy was just training all the time, you know. So that motivated me there. And before lockdown, before that all hit us, I, for the first time, felt I had an understanding of our business and the trends and where stuff's going. And we really had worked out some problems in our gyms and applied it and started to grow. Then COVID hit. And post that, I've kind of picked it back up. I've got into reading stats and going, how many leads do we get and why aren't they coming in? And it's different. Like one area is lower socioeconomic, so it's affordability. Another gym is so packed that room's a problem. And the other one is a very affluent area with a lot of old people. So response to marketing is not high. And knowing the problems helps you solve it. So at the moment, that's the kick I'm on. If people can't afford it in this area, what do we have to do to get them in? If we don't get enough leads in the other area, what do we have to do to increase it? And if one gym's so packed that we're, struggling to fit people in, what do we do there? Do we charge more? Do we open up more classes? Like, these are the issues that are motivating me at the moment. Because
you've got to get down into the granular detail. And
yes,
I'm a big statistician. Yeah, I like facts and I like stats. You can't. The data doesn't lie.
Yeah.
If you've got the data and you analyze it and
that's right.
The right data, of course, you can really start.
Well, you know how it goes. A gym's not growing. You're like, all right, are they running the floor well? Are the staff on the phone? Are we talking right? And you make all these things up that could be going wrong. But then when you go and look at stats, you go, hang on, we're getting enough leads. A bunch of them aren't even coming in. What is it here? Oh, they've heard the price and they're not interested. Yeah. And that's what's actually going on. And yeah, I'm like you, Jackson. Stats. I mean, when I even form my worldview, I prefer stats because I don't think your mind's got enough data to make real decisions. But it's always amazing when you read stats how shocked you are that the world being more violent. When you actually read statistics, you start to understand. And people have this perception. People have a perception the world's getting worse when it's getting better all the time in regards to that sort of thing. And it's just amazing how wrong you can be because your brain's not designed. So, I'm motivated by
we're emotional,
that.
aren't we? We're emotional creatures in the day, and we work off our emotion too much, where sometimes you've got to dial it back and you've got to look at the detail. I mean, I have to admit, I'm the worst person for looking at detail. Yeah. And I think there's a fine line, isn't there? I think data is important, but if you overanalyze stuff, you get to that, you almost get yourself stuck in the mud a little bit because you've overanalyzed stuff, and you're not then taking enough action because what was it? Analysis paralysis. That's it. Analysis.
That's true. Yeah,
and you're there, and you just get to your point where you think, well, I'm spent all day analyzing this. Now I'm scared to make a decision or to actually take action on it. And sometimes you actually
I have to remind you about that sometimes, don't I, Gavin?
Well, it's true, though, isn't it? Sometimes you have a great idea and you think, oh, this is a great idea. And all of a sudden you Google it and you realize that everyone else is doing that great idea that you had just thought of. And then you start thinking, well, actually, maybe it's a bad idea, but then, if you look at the data might tell you, actually, you know what, there's a gap in the market because it's all about supply and demand, for instance. If there's enough people wanting it, no matter how many people are in the market, does it? If there's enough people, so
that's true, and that's motivating me at the moment. And with my own training, I do a lot of strength work and stretching. It's about getting an aging body to stay healthy. I'm in my 50s now, and I've recently had a rotator cuff tear, a minor one, but I've just got through that. But other than that, I've really not had problems, but I'm doing a lot of strength. So I'm motivated to keep my skills up, but keep my body functioning well. And, in the old days, I used to bash my body around. By the time I got mid-30s, I had a lot of problems. And I really have trained most of that out over my 40s into 50. I've done much more strength, stretching, and focus on not doing stuff that hurts my body, and so that's really motivating me these days. I still train 6 days a week. If you include strength work and everything, I'm still doing 6 days a week. And it's not extreme high intensity, but it is quite a lot of volume and consistent with that. And that seems to work for my body.
What, just out of interest, what sort of strength and conditioning stuff do you do? Do you do classes, or are you just on free weights, or, what sort of stuff?
Yeah, I'm mainly on free weights. I go to a guy, he's an ex-bodybuilder whose kids train with us, but he does all my body fat measurements and my measurements to keep me, is stuff working? Are you going backwards? What's going on with the diet? But a lot of it falls into what's called hyperemia training. So it's weightlifting, but it's not excessively heavy, low reps. It's more higher reps, but a lot of volume. And, there was all those rep ranges in the past, but they're discovering you can actually get effects with multiple rep ranges. It just comes down to the volume and the intensity sort of curve. And as an older body where you don't want to stress the joints as much, but you want the benefit of the blood flow and the increase in the muscle mass, I find it sits with me well. So I'm doing like a lot of 12 to 20 rep range with different protocols, but quite a lot of volume, lots of volume, like quite a lot, but not, 6, 7 out of 10 intensity. So I can do it the next day without beating myself up. And I find when you get to the end of the year, you've done so much more. And there's no reason to beat myself up. I'm not competing at a high level. I just want to be in good shape and be able to do my skills,
Well, that's the thing. Well, the thing is, you're in an active role, aren't you? And it's important that you keep yourself fit. And it's not just that as well. When your students rock up to your dojang and they see the master or they see the lead instructor, even if you can't kick like you could do in your 20s, or just being fit and healthy, being able to assist them and do the basics, that's sometimes all you need, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. And I enjoy that. I enjoy being able to, if I need to demo something the way it's meant to be done, I can still do it. I can spin, I can kick, I can punch, I can do anything. I'm not, I've done a lot of yoga over the last year, and I'll tell you, that has literally made me 25 again as far as flexibility goes. I'm not
I agree. I do yoga as well.
Well, Well, I'm glad you've not got your yoga pants on today, because it's a bit early in the morning for me for that over here. Okay, so Rodney, we're just going to start, I suppose, wrapping up the interview a little bit. One of the questions that we always like to ask towards the end is, if given what you've achieved, in your martial arts career, and obviously I'm sure you've still got many more years to achieve more stuff. What sort of advice would you give to a younger you? So someone just starting out, all the knowledge that you've got, what sort of piece of advice would you give to them?
Look, one of the biggest thing I'm constantly talking to new people and parents about is consistency. So you know how it goes. You get someone new and they want to train 21 times a week, but they're going to last about 3 months and then they're gone. And I get this all the time, like, how often should I train? All right, you're going to train for the next 3 years straight. How many times a week do you think you can keep up for 3 years without stopping? So, I try to get them to understand that the consistency over time is more important than how much they're training at the start, because, if you can get that pattern into their life and they want to get more intense, they'll train 4 or 5 times a week and do it for years because they've got the discipline to continue. But most people at the start want to lose weight, want to get in shape, or they want to be Bruce Lee in 2 weeks. Yeah. And I watch them overtrain and burn out, and 3 months later, they don't want to train. There's constant conversations. The biggest thing I'm saying is, even people losing weight, look, what do you think you can do each week? And do it for 3 years straight, because by that time it's trained in. They are hooked. And so that's the biggest thing I have, because I'm sick of seeing people do it and then stop and do it and stop.
And I think, and we live in a culture now where instant gratification is everywhere. Yeah. That's the problem now, isn't it? The kids yes. Look at a picture of someone on TikTok, doing these jumping back kicks or whatever, and then then they expect to be able to learn it in a week, don't they?
That's right. And this is the one place where you're going to learn that's not the case. To achieve big things, it's never immediate gratification. As a matter of fact, delayed gratification is one of the key attributes to very successful people. The ability to work with no reward, knowing it'll come a lot later. That's something you need to learn, Yeah.
No. And when you look at, also talking about things like real estate and things like that, they're the type of things, aren't they? You invest in it earlier on, knowing that in 10, 15 years time, there's going to be an asset for you or for your family or whatever. And that's right. I totally agree. It's about, you've got to look at, don't look at the here and now, but you've also got to plan for the future, haven't you?
yeah, it's almost like set things in motion that just occur over your lifetime to give you what you want at the end. And wealth management is definitely one of them. You know, a lot of that is setting the cogs in effect, and almost it's set and forget, and you're contributing whatever finances, whatever, but you know the return's coming later on, you know. So that's that's a good representation of it.
No, but it's definitely good advice, I think. And like you say, being consistent, you know, even when we started the podcast, you know, one thing that we said that, you know, for this podcast to be successful, we need to make sure that it's consistent. We don't want to do 3 episodes, put 3 out. Everyone goes, oh, we really enjoyed that, and then not launch one for another month. So every week, you know, we're always planning who's the next guest. Sunday night it goes out, and it's been consistent for coming up for nearly 2 years now.
2 years now,
yeah. You know, so and it's not easy. Sometimes we're like, oh, you know, come on, Gav. And Jackie's like, come on, Gav, we've got no guests lined up for next week. You know, pull your finger out or whatever. Let's get someone booked in. I'm just like, oh, you know, do we have to do one this week? I've got a lot on. And it's like, no, you know. But then
you know, in the back of the mind, it's that consistent. We made that commitment.
Yeah.
No, and
well done.
Year on year now.
It's a good thing. Like, you got some good podcasts on there. It's just, like I said, it's so great to hear other people's stories, you know.
And it's funny how similar so many of them are as well. You know, it's funny, because especially people, you know, who've grown up in a similar era. You know, it was always about Bruce Lee, and you know, and the same themes always come up in the podcast. Like, you know, it was just classic. You know, talking about the failure thing. You know, it's something we bring up all the time, because again, it's an important thing we're trying to drum home, I suppose, as well to listeners and people starting out their martial arts journey. You know, that perseverance and discipline is so key to, you know, to ultimately get the rewards that you want, isn't it?
Valuable lessons.
So. Well, Rodney, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this morning. Really enjoyed our
thanks, guys.
It's been absolutely great getting the insights from the man behind the master demonstration.
I do look at it every now and again and go, oh my God.
And I suppose for any of our listeners that haven't seen it, it's well worth a watch.
It'll be on YouTube somewhere, won't it? So
it is
for sure. Just quickly before you go, have you got any aspirations to get over to the UK, you guys?
Yeah, well, I obviously a year and a bit I've been trying to get over to Joseph Scambry's wedding. So the poor guy.
We had to cancel the stag week. We were just at the start of February. We were due to go out snowboarding. So that was devastating.
Yeah, I remember when he was setting that up, and but yeah, if everything's okay, I'd love to come next year when he's meant to be having the wedding. I hope it all goes ahead, but yeah, I plan to be out there towards the end of next year. So, and I'll always be over there. Like when the Worlds start, we always bring a team, and that's the one trip I like to go on. So I'll always be coming back.
I know I was gutted. I got knocked out of the World Championships. I entered the vets division the last time, and I got through to the semis, and I got beat by one of your guys, real tall guy. He must have been. It was in the vets.
Yeah, that would have been Ashley Ratton.
It went down to the final point, and he caught me with a bloody jumping back fist out of nowhere. Yeah. I was like,
I'm pretty sure it was Ashley. He's an awkward guy to fight. That's why he ticks points. He's just one of those
he's just
guys.
Tall and gangly, and he's just awkward to get around, you know, and you're like, and he just, you get to that final decision, he just almost just put his arm out there, and I just ran pretty much straight onto it. And I was like, come on.
Oh dear, Mr. Cook.
Yeah.
Mr. Cook.
You learn the lessons next time.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't enter the sparring, just referee next time.
Yeah. I'll leave it to the kids. Now. I'm getting too old for that nonsense anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, Rodney. Great speaking to you.
Thank you guys
very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Rodney. Take care, mate.
Everyone. Bye. See you later.
I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode of the Motivated Martial Artist podcast. Don't forget to check out our Facebook page and our Facebook group, the Motivated Martial Artist podcast.
And don't forget also the Motivated Martial Artist Instagram page.
So head along for some extra content, interviews, and much more.
So until next week, it's bye from Jackson
and Gavin,
the Motivated Martial Artists.